was first introduced to Star Trek at a young age back in 1987 when The Next Generation premiered. And it was my first introduction to the franchise. At that time I didn't know the original series existed, but Next Generation was the first Star Trek that I had ever seen, and I want to say I'm pretty sure I was introduced at the pilot, but one of the things I still remember is the episode 11001001 where the Binars steal the Enterprise. It's like for some reason that seeing that episode is one of my earliest memories of Star Trek. And even though I'm certain I had seen all the episodes previous to that, but for some reason that one's always stuck in my head. And it was the only show that my parents would let us watch with dinner. I didn't remember this until my parents mentioned it again to me during one of my recent visits back to New York. But most of the time we would eat dinner at the table together, and we would not be allowed to watch television during dinner. The only exception was Saturday nights. We would order a pizza, and we would all sit in the living room and watch Star Trek. And for a long time, this was just like a family tradition that we just always did. And I couldn't say what attracted me to the show originally, but I've always been a Star Trek fan, and as I grew older, I just always enjoyed watching new episodes every week. It was just it was kind of one of those things that I can't explain. It's just I've always liked the show. I've always liked the franchise. It's always been something that I've enjoyed and have drawn meaning and strength from, and it's always been, I guess, a part of my core fabric. But eventually, after having watched some of the Next Generation, I discovered through my parents that there had been a series before that, which was the original series, and we just always enjoyed watching both shows. Like I started watching the original series, and at the time when I was a kid, and this is probably dating me a little bit, but when I was a kid, we only had 2 Star Trek series, so and yeah, I was just like them. It's like science fiction has always been something that I've always enjoyed, and even though I've always been a science fiction fan, Star Trek in particular has been one of my consistent favorites. I often joke to other people that it's like the 2 reasons I never have money are Star Trek and furry, and it's really true. It's like most of my disposable income goes to either Star Trek things or furry stuff, and at some point I'll probably have to show y'all some of my collections of Star Trek goodies that I've collected over the years, because I forget where this was said, but it's very true. It's like when you get older, your toys just get more expensive, and it really is kind of a truism, at least as far as I've observed. But when I was a kid, a lot of my toys were Star Trek related. I had all the model kits. I had army of Playmates action figures, and play sets like the bridge, the transporter set, the engineering play set, and I had all of the toys. The phasers and the tricorders, including this one, which I remember being one of my favorites. It's like it was. For some reason, some of these were really hard to find, in particular this tricorder, and it was very difficult to find one. And when I finally did, I don't even remember where, I was just so ecstatic at the time that I had actually found one, because it was so cool, even though it was clearly less detailed and such compared to the versions you see on the show. But still, young me was just so excited to just have this tricorder that even though it didn't really actually scan things, it was fun to pretend that they did. I mean, I've always been a self-professed Star Trek nerd ever since I was a kid. I mean, that was until I had found furry. That was like my primary interest in life. And as a young person, I had the opportunity to meet a few of the actors at local convention, which was called Icon Island Convention. And I met Denise Crosby there, and Vaughn Armstrong, and there was a couple of other actors that I saw on stage, George Takei, Ethan Phillips, and it was at this convention that I found the elusive Deanna Troi action figure, because some folks, I mean most folks nowadays probably wouldn't know this, but at the time when Playmates produced the action figures for I guess the second round of action figures excuse me, to back up a little bit, Galoob had produced a bunch of the original toys, and at least I think it was Galoob. They had produced like a die-cast metal Enterprise D with saucers that actually separated. Most of the main crew and random aliens like the Sele and Antikin and a Ferengi, and for some reason they had like a Ferengi shuttle and Starfleet shuttle. There weren't a whole lot of toys at that period, but sometime later, maybe during the 90s, they had started producing a bunch of action figures from Playmates, and I guess this might have been like the height of Star Trek action figures in particular. But they produced like the Next Generation cast and all the shows through that era, and then they started producing a lot of the different versions of characters. I mean, Playmates had probably the largest library of Star Trek action figures out there, but particularly when they first started and they did the Next Generation cast, it was almost impossible to find a Deanna Troi, and I couldn't tell you why, but for some reason they just didn't make as many of them. I don't know if this is because they just thought it wouldn't sell as well or whatever the case would be, but it was at Icon that I finally found a Deanna Troi action figure and completed my set because I wanted the entire cast. So it was at this convention that I finally found it. And at the time I thought Icon was a small convention because for some reason I was just under this incorrect assumption that nothing big would ever be by my house. I didn't realize until I went to my first furry convention that Icon was actually really huge. And there was a lot of things about Star Trek that I didn't realize as a kid, like I didn't understand, at least at that young age, until I guess I was a teenager or so, the significance of Uhura's presence on the bridge in the original series, or that TV shows could get canceled. I just, as a young child, I thought Star Trek was a given. And now as an adult, it's like I continue to be a fan with every new iteration of the franchise, and I've developed a much greater appreciation of being thankful for just whatever Star Trek they put out there, because I mean, you never know. Things sometimes shows don't last long, but Star Trek has been one of those things that has meant something not just to me but to people around the world in all kinds of backgrounds, and it's just one of those things that, I mean, it should say something that 50 years after the original series premiered, that we're still making new Star Trek, that we still have fans of every version of the show. And it's really remarkable that something Gene Roddenberry created is still going strong all this time later and has no signs of slowing down. It's like I'm one of those people that it's like I like every version of Star Trek for what it brings to the table. It's like I don't understand some of the folks that don't like the new stuff. I mean, I understand, I respect their opinion on that fact, but I mean, just the thing is that it's like I'm just of the mindset that I'm just grateful for any new Star Trek. And for every Star Trek that comes out, rather than raging against what I don't like or what doesn't make sense to me, I just enjoy it for what it brings to the table. It's like, with Star Trek Picard, I was just so unbelievably humbled to see Patrick Stewart come back to this role. And, for me, it was just a fantastic experience. And I'll probably talk about a lot more of my history and my fandom with Star Trek and such in future videos. But, for now, I just kind of wanted to talk about, how I was introduced to Star Trek and kind of a little bit of what it means to me, which I'm hoping that comes through by, what you've seen so far. But, I mean, if you know me, it's like that's, two of the things that I love to talk about, furry and Star Trek. And, there'll probably be more of these as time goes on. So, live long and prosper. Thanks for watching. And if you liked it, click the subscribe button and leave a comment below. You can also find me on Twitter and a few other places on the web, or support me via Patreon or Ko-fi. Zebra hugs!